People are starting to develop a healthy level of skepticism around applications on their devices. Whether they're downloading an app for their phones through the official App Store or software from the AUR, people have started to realize that spyware and information stealers could be bundled with those programs. But a massively overlooked botnet vector are the apps that you install on your smart TV. So in case you didn't know, virtually every modern TV has an internal operating system, usually based on Linux by the way, and that's why you're able to install additional apps onto it. The TVs are not just large simple display panels, they're really another computer. They have their own network stack and app stores that you can install programs from, and there's usually less scrutiny that's applied to the apps in those stores by the end users and even by the companies behind the stores because the TV isn't really thought of as a computer. And even if they do acknowledge the true meaning of smart TV, they don't see it as much of a security risk because most sensitive data isn't going to go through the smart TV. Nobody does their banking or their taxes on a TV. There usually isn't any important data stored on it. So even if it did get hacked, it wouldn't be that big a deal, right? But unfortunately, there is some sketchy software that's embedded in over 1/3 of the apps that you can install on your smart TV from the app stores, and that is residential proxy software. Now, this is something that's been around for a long time, and it's really a kind of grayware, meaning that it's not as outright malicious as an information stealer or a ransomware virus, but if the people who accidentally installed this software realized what it was doing, they probably wouldn't want it and they would want to get rid of it as soon as possible. So residential proxies, as the name implies, is a type of proxy software used to mask the IP addresses of the people who are paying to use it, but it specifically masks that IP with an IP address belonging to a residential ISP like Comcast, Verizon, or whatever internet service the victim of the residential proxy software is paying for. So if you install this software by accident, which is often bundled with other legitimate applications, then your internet connection is going to be used by potentially thousands of residential proxy customers. Now you might be wondering, why would anybody want to use a residential proxy in the first place? Can't they just use a VPN or Tor to mask their IP address? Well, as you may have noticed, when you use a VPN, some online services become harder or even borderline impossible to use. At the very least, you probably noticed that with a VPN, you had to fill out more CAPTCHAs in order to log into something or in order to complete an action on a website, and even popular services like YouTube are outright blocking access to the service for a lot of VPN connections. Now, there's a lot of different reasons why VPN connections get blocked, but the one that's most relevant to this scenario is to stop bots. Whether you're using bots to scrape all of the content of a web page to feed into a large language model without having to pay for an API to get that data, or if you're using bots to leave comments and likes on a post in order to artificially create a narrative or make something go viral, one of the key components of a successful botting campaign is to cycle the bots through different IP addresses, because otherwise it would be really easy for the operators of a website to just see that thousands of accounts or hundreds of accounts are all being logged into from the same IP, and they are liking and commenting on the same post, or in a pure web scraping scenario, they'll see thousands of requests coming from one IP address, and then they're going to rate limit it because there's no way that someone could actually watch 1,000 Instagram reels per hour, so you know that it's not legitimate user traffic. Now, the less popular websites with less sophisticated security do still get absolutely bamboozled by VPNs because, of course, VPNs let you change your IP address, and in most cases, you can choose from thousands of IPs across dozens of countries, so you can make it appear as if thousands of legitimate accounts with their own IPs are naturally liking a post and making it go viral. But it's actually really easy to tell if an IP address belongs to a VPN service, and then you can put up extra hurdles for any requests that are coming from that IP, like extra CAPTCHAs, or you could just outright block the requests that are coming from those IPs. So to make the botting easier, a lot of the puppeteers behind these botnets pay for residential proxies so that when they're scraping or whatever they're doing, the online services see an IP address belonging to a regular residential ISP, and they don't hit the request with as many roadblocks as they would a VPN or a Tor connection. Now, researchers discovered this botnet by downloading and unpacking 6,038 applications from LG's WebOS and Samsung's Tizen stores and found residential proxy fingerprints inside 2,058 different applications, which works out to about 42.5% infection rate of the LG apps and 26.9% of the Samsung apps having this unwanted software bundled within a legitimate application. So for your average user, they can go out and they can buy a perfectly legitimate television, sign in and visit its app store and download some kind of game or some kind of animated wallpaper and then accidentally install the networking equivalent of an Airbnb listing for your public IP address. And to make things worse, the residential proxies usually don't terminate whenever you close the app. They continue running in the background. Now, even though residential proxies, like I said earlier, kind of fall into a gray area of software, they can still cause a lot of issues for the people whose devices have been turned into endpoints for the proxy service. For one, the proxy services themselves are not very ethical in how they market, especially in how they get all of these residential IP endpoints. So even if you do get some kind of warning from an app like you see here that your IP is going to be used to download stuff, it's still not very clear exactly what is going on to the end user that clicks yes here. I also love this part here in the notification where they say that your IP address is only going to be used for approved business use cases and never unauthorized uses. Those use cases might be approved by Bright Data themselves, the people who are actually selling this residential IP service, but it almost certainly violates the TOS of whatever websites the person who pays for the proxy service is ultimately connecting to, because the whole point of these proxies most of the time, like 90% of the time, is to just avoid rate limits in order to scrape or in order to use some kind of bot, like I said earlier, to make things go viral. And because your IP address is being used for botting, web scraping, or other unauthorized activity, somebody else's actions could result in you being blocked by the service that is being scraped or botted. I mean, imagine that your Instagram account all of a sudden gets banned because it's associated to the same IP address as several botnets that are conducting a botting campaign. Or you might try going into YouTube one day only to end up in CAPTCHA hell because 1,000 requests have already been made in the background by bots that are using your TV as a proxy, and now YouTube is starting to hit you with rate limits. And even if you're not directly affected by IP bans or extra CAPTCHAs, these residential proxy services are ultimately feeding a beast that most people on the internet hate. I mean, these services allow bots to thrive. These bots make the internet feel so much less human because literally most of the comments and interaction that you see on social media is coming from automated software. A lot of the bots that scrape content are then feeding that content into large language models for training. So if you hate the AI hype train, residential proxies are basically like the coal car that's fueling that fire. And of course, if your internet connection is slow or you're on a metered connection where you only get so many gigabytes of data every month, residential proxies are going to eat into that and give you network-wide problems where your whole device now becomes slower because you've gone over your allotted rate, or it might even raise the cost of your next bill. Now, of course, it's possible to sneak malware, grayware, whatever you want to call it, into a legitimate app that's available in the App Store. Literally millions of people have been affected through apps that came from the official Google Play Store. So clearly, official app repos are not able to catch everything that violates their TOS. But apparently, LG and Samsung's app stores don't even have any rules that prohibit residential proxies from being installed on people's TVs. A large portion of the apps containing this software are literally published by Bright Data Ltd., the same company that owns one of the most popular residential proxy services. So it's not even like these companies are paying app developers to run the proxy in the background. They're making the apps themselves. They're probably vibe coding some basic game or screensaver whose main purpose is to really just route bot traffic through your IP address in the background. So that's one thing to look out for, not just on your TV, but on all devices, any app you install. If the software is being published by Bright Data, Oxy Labs, Desaline Inc., or some other reverse proxy company, there's a good chance that that app is pimping out your internet connection. But the best way to really check for these residential proxies is to watch the network activity that's coming from your smart TV. It's naturally going to contact update, advertising, and telemetry servers, so a few background connections to those IP addresses are to be expected, but persistent outbound traffic or a significant upload activity after every visible app has been closed on the TV is an indication that someone is using your connection. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share it to hack the algorithm, and check out my online store, based.win, where you can buy my awesome merch and accessories for your phone or laptop. 10% store-wide discount when you pay with Monero XMR at checkout. Have a great rest of your day.